Hello and welcome to another gluten-free episode of the Audiophile Man. And what have we got for you this week? A pair of speakers, but not just any old speakers. These speakers are powered, and not just that, they are all the way from France, from Triangle, no less. These are the, how do you say this, Borea? I'm going to call them the Borea Br03 Connect powered speakers. Now, these speakers are based on original passive designs, and that's not an overly common practice. To produce a pair of passive speakers, in this case priced, £429, and then to release a powered version of the same, priced here at £649, is slightly unusual, although the bass ports on the passive version sit on the lower front of the cabinet and the upper rear of the wireless Connect versions. This is because the Br03 Connect's built-in amplifier, well, it takes up too much room at the bottom of the cabinet, so they had to move those bass ports. Even so, this converting a passive to a powered design, I quite like the idea of that, because at least you are, well, hopefully, taking on board a well-designed, neutral and balanced design to work from. That is, depending on the design, of course, you should have a nicely configured speaker design as a basis for your new powered speakers. You can hit the ground running with a powered variant, as it were. Now, the Br03 Connect speakers are neat, good-looking designs with a 160mm mid-bass paper driver, plus an EFS wave-guided 25mm fabric domed tweeter sitting just above. That pair of drivers sit within a cabinet spanning 206mm by 360 by 314mm. In terms of weight, well, the speakers are slightly different, as you might expect. The master speaker, with all the controls built in and that amp, that weighs in at 7.3 kilograms, while the slave unit, without any of that, is a little lighter at 6.6 kilograms. A supplied 3-meter speaker cable connects the two, and that's how these things tend to work. That is, you have a master speaker, and that contains the amplifier. It also contains all the sockets where all the sources are to be connected, and the signal is sent to the second speaker, the slave speaker, via that 3-meter speaker cable provided. And that's how you control and hear your speakers. Now, inside that master speaker is a host of tech, providing you with a variety of connectivity options, including a built-in phono amplifier supporting moving magnet, Bluetooth supporting aptX HD at 24-bit 48K, HDMI for AV use, USB providing support up to 32-bit 384 kHz, or DSD256 for computer use. For example, optical, there's coax, subwoofer output, and an RCA 3.5mm port are all included as well. That little lot is powered by a Class D 60-watt amplifier into 8 ohms and controlled by a supplied remote. This is all good stuff, and I like the basic setup. Do I have any issues with the speakers at this stage? Well, yes I do, but those problems that I have with the Br03 can be grouped to a kind of lack of attention to detail, I suppose. As you know, this is where the devil lives. Small details are critical. These are the things that can get under your skin, and they can irritate. So, irritations then, rather than major issues. For example, the remote control offers tone controls. Now, I would have liked to have seen these tone controls on the speaker cabinet themselves, but there are no physical versions. There are no tone control knobs on the speaker cabinet, only on the remote control. And that means you can get a bit confused. You have no idea how much bass or treble you are adding, or have added, or have removed, for that matter, via the remote. You can become confused very quickly, and I was. Yes, you can use your ears, sure, Well, it would have been nice still to have a visual gauge. You also get a bass boost option. This is a EQ which piles on the bass from the get-go. Trouble is, this bass boost option immediately kicked in out of the box when you switched on these speakers, and bass boost will always kick in when you turn these speakers on. The fact that you have to opt out of bass boost is bad enough. It's worse though in that it sounded absolutely horrible, to be frank, at high volumes, well, the volumes I was using to review these things. It made these speakers sound bloated and boomy. Saying that though, I can see the boost being of use for AV or for low volume near field use, but not for general 2-channel use, and not set at default because it kind of gives the wrong impression out of the box, especially to users who may be raw beginners or are just not used to the quirky nature of hi-fi settings. That is, imagine you're a raw beginner, you really don't know your way around the controls, and you turn the speakers on and the bass boost throws itself at you. It sounds horrible. As I say, you're a raw beginner, you don't know you have to turn bass boost off. All you're doing is hearing a horrible sound. And what you're going to do? Maybe put the speakers back in the box and never listen to them again. So yes, this particular feature, it could be the beginning of a horrible misunderstanding. I was also not a big fan of the manual that I found online, not in the box. The manual is generally fine, but not exactly meticulous, freely mixing up terms like factory settings and default settings on the same subject, which was confusing to read, being open to misinterpretation. The manual also lacked useful information. For example, it doesn't tell you the full list of Bluetooth codecs. It only tells you about aptX HD. On the company website though, in the promo literature on that website, yes, you can see the full list of codecs right there. So let me tell you now, you get the basic vanilla aptX, you get aptX LL, SBC, AAC, and the one we all know about now, aptX HD. All of that information should have been in the manual as well. It was not. So yeah, not major problems, but little irritations. So that's basically the techie bit of the triangle. Question is, how do they sound? Well, let's have a little look, shall we? And welcome to the sound quality tests for the Triangle Borea Br03 Connect powered speakers. Now, I grabbed a pair of XTZ Tune 4 speakers from my little reference room because they are remarkably cultured designs. And what do I mean by that? Well, tonal realism is very nice, pretty balanced, pretty neutral. And I wanted to see just how the more expensive Triangle speakers sounded in comparison, and if they brought anything extra to the party, as it were. In terms of those EQ and tone control settings I mentioned earlier, well, I selected, for good or ill, the factory settings to provide an out-of-the-box experience. I didn't deviate from those settings during the bulk of the tests. For sound sources, well, I began with my Astle & Kern Can Alpha digital audio player. I played the Dove's track Carousels at 24-bit 96K via the aptX HD codec. Now I'll tell you this, I'm not a massive fan of any of the aptX codecs, to be absolutely honest with you. We can do better, and with codecs like LDAC, we do. But not here, because LDAC is not available here in this speaker set. Thus, despite using aptX HD, I was still impressed by the large open soundstage and the rock-solid stereo image that was pinned dead center between the speakers. Now, Bluetooth as a basic music carrier can be rather thin and edgy at times, and that presentation could be heard here, but the aptX HD codec didn't really help matters, encouraging that presentation. A presentation that I am sure the LDAC codec, for example, would have softened and enhanced. In general terms via Bluetooth, bass was big and bold and weighty. It had plenty of mass and bounce, and that drove the music along at pace, although it could have been better focused using Bluetooth. So I moved on, didn't I, from Bluetooth pretty sharply, and I went wired, hooking up my older Astor & Kern AK120 via Optical, playing Bob Marley's I Shot the Sheriff, again at 24-bit 96K. Wired play was better balanced in terms of the overall presentation. What I heard here was a clean, open, scrubbed soundstage, and one that was wholly transparent. Vocals, for example, offered both precision, allowing me to hear some words within lyrics for the first time, a kind of like, oh, that's what he's saying, that kind of thing. Even so, I wouldn't say the sound was strictly balanced, wasn't truly neutral. It was slightly in the spotlight, slightly accentuated, at least the upper mids and the treble was. Heightened, you might say, just a tad. But that did allow that spotless, cleansed soundstage where detail had no problem reaching your ears way from the back of the mix. Bass remained strong and fast-paced, giving a good grounding to the music as a whole. I then grabbed a turntable, in my case the Rigby RP3, and I hooked that up to the internal phono amplifier and played a copy of Frank Sinatra's Come Fly With Me from the Capitol album of the same name, and that sounded good. Not amazing, not bad, but generally good. The soundstage was of a healthy size, bass was reasonable, upper mids and treble offered a decent amount of detail, but the frequency extremes could be a struggle. Sinatra's vocals were the highlight here as they sat smack in the middle of the mid-band itself. They sounded rich, they sounded warming, detailed and emotive. Overall, the phono amplifier was okay and ideal for occasional vinyl use, although I don't think it's good enough to be seen as a daily driver, because information seemed to hit a sonic ceiling and then it rolled off. The upper mid-range reaching bank of strings on the track Around the World, well, that was a sorry case in point. In short, and for the price, I would have liked to have seen a better quality phono amp or have it removed entirely, and then you could have brought the price of the whole speaker package down a little bit. So I then finally turned to my lapbook, my MacBook in particular, plugging that in via USB, and I played Sonny Rollins and the jazz outing St. Thomas, again at 24-bit 96K via the software player Audiophile. Now, despite this track remaining at the same resolution as the other digital sources, the greater bandwidth from USB really mattered here. It offered a rich array of detail, including a powerful yet reedy sax performance, resonance from the piano, and a sumptuous drum solo mid-track, which showed tonal variation from each and every drum hit, plus a lavish amount of fragile detail in and around the treble frequency. Again, the entire mix was played 1 degree to the left of neutral, just slightly emphasized to give the soundstage an airy and clean effect. USB, though, in general terms, was the best sound source connection so far. And that's basically the review of the Br03 Connect powered speakers. Let me give you a few final thoughts, then we'll do some pros and cons, and then I'll give you a rating. Now, apart from the fact that I disliked intensely the bass boost, which should have been an opt-in feature, not an opt-out, I do generally dislike tone controls. I would rather run with the designer's own default sonic intentions, as it were, rather than mess it all up by jiggling around with tone controls. After all, that's why you're spending all that money, isn't it? In this case, though, in this particular case, I would encourage you to dabble with the tone controls. They might actually improve the sound, at least for your ears. They might indeed provide a better balanced and more neutral output. That aside, the Borea Br03 Connect speakers are packed with features that will provide you with a large entertainment hub of options, allowing you to plug in a host of sources that span analog and digital and AV, giving you choices for digital audio players and Bluetooth devices. The clean, open, transparent delivery from the Br03 Connects give music a fresh and, as I say, a well-scrubbed feel that will appeal to many music fans out there, while the physicality of the speakers themselves, that helps to provide both power and presence, especially around the lower frequencies. Pros and cons. In the good section, I liked the soundstage. It had a rather clean canvas to lay the music upon, and on that canvas you had big bass, lots of power, lots of bounce from these speakers. The mid-range was rather transparent. You could really reach into the mix and you could hear subtle details at the rear of that mix. In terms of sound sources, I liked the optical play, and most of all, I enjoyed the USB play. In the bad section, I'm not particularly a fan of the bass boost. I dislike the fact it switches itself on immediately when you turn on the speakers. I would rather opt in, and only then for possibly AV use and near-field listening. I wasn't a mad fan of the accentuated upper frequencies. Sometimes they could verge on the edgy. Bluetooth performance, well, there's one of those edgy moments. I wasn't a great fan of that. I thought the codecs, for the price, were rather limiting. The phono amplifier was fine, but nothing more than fine. The manual felt a little rushed, and there was a lack of attention to detail, which I was not happy about. So we have lots of pros and we have lots of cons, and because of that, I'm going to be giving these speakers, the Br03 Connects, a 7 out of 10. And that's it, folks. Thank you very much for watching to the end of this video. Before you go, can you click down below on the like and subscribe buttons if you haven't done so already? Also, a bit further down, check out my Patreon page. You will find there an exclusive hi-fi news etc. video. There's one every single week. Also, these videos, you will see them first on Patreon. They're generally there a good few days before they appear on this channel. There's lots of other stuff there too. Have a browse. Also down below you'll see links to my Facebook group, which you're welcome to join, plus my website, which has a host of information you will not see here. There are terabytes of information over there. It's been going a lot longer than this channel, for example, so there's all kinds of stuff. Anyway, I'll be back on Saturday with a music alerts video. I think that's what you call it. Video. That's it. And it will tell you about all the latest CD and vinyl releases, and the odd book, of course. And I hope to see you there. I hope to have your company. Until then, folks, bye-bye for now.